Tallahassee Quarterback Club. Hugh's been here the whole time. He's been coordinating these events and helps me set up travel and gets me all set up. And it was interesting because, he mentioned Jacob being one of the youngest board members and that he was one of the youngest board members at then, but I'm a little bit worried about him because I think you're starting to show your age a little bit. I know you dress young, like you dress younger, but you're starting to show your age because you said to Jacob, like he's going to help your Twitter following. He's really going to start tweeting, but it's called X now. And the other thing is, the kids nowadays, they're not really using Twitter or X. They're using TikTok. So what I want to see is Hugh doing some TikTok dancing. That would definitely, you want to grow the social media following, I think that's what it would take. But I appreciate you having me out there. But next time, no hidden cameras. All right, I feel bad. I didn't know. You can't.
Shame on you.
I think we might have a reality show in our future too, if we want to. But it's great to be back. When we were tossing around some dates, my college football season gets a little nutty. And I'm always trying to figure out, all right, when can I make it there? When am I traveling? I travel almost every weekend, either to New York City to do studio television for college football. And so I was looking at this weekend, and this date was one of the dates. It was September 5th. And I said, man, no, that's a risky date. Because I knew exactly when it fell. It was right after the LSU Florida State game. And trust me, as somebody who's talked to a lot of these events, you don't want to be addressing a room after a loss like Clemson had last night or like LSU was dealt by us. That is a bummer. So I could not have been happier. But I took the risk because I felt pretty good about our chances, and sure enough, it paid off. But I am so fired up to be here. I was walking up, these two right here, I was on the elevator with these two, and they were asking me, they said, oh, you're speaking tonight. They said, are you nervous? And I said, no. I said, I get to talk to people on the radio for a living. I'm pretty used to this. And I talk to rooms like this at other quarterback clubs. I'm like, no, I'm not that nervous. But I didn't know that I was going to have to talk in front of Charlie Ward. And now I'm nervous. We have the greatest college quarterback of all time. Charlie, every time I talk to him, he'll text me during a show. I know he won't call, but he'll text me something. He'll be like, hey, you guys, this, I can't believe you said that, or something like that. But every time I think about what a special human being Charlie is, and what an example he set for me as a true freshman, I came into that quarterback room. Mark Vick was our coach, but getting to watch the way he handled himself, watch the way he handled success, never let it change him as a human being, and the godly example that you set for me, man, it was something I'm forever grateful for, man. I appreciate it. There's somebody else in here, too, that I saw, and I see him every time I'm here because he's a faithful, loyal attender here at the Tallahassee Quarterback Club. It's Donnie Young. Donnie back there. So Donnie, true story. My dad had told me, and my sisters too, that he had a deal for us that he would offer. He said, if you get a full scholarship, a full ride, I'll get you a car. And I think it was a pretty smart, offer, because college tuition, it was expensive back then. Now, trust me, I've told my daughters I'm buying 2 cars. There's a full ride because it might be cheaper. And so, sure enough, I got to sign full ride here at Florida State. And so my dad picked up his end, and Donnie Young sold my dad and me my first car, Toyota 4Runner, Toyota Tallahassee. That's the good news. The bad news is, with NIL now, I think I might be owed some back, right? I think I might have been driving that thing for free or getting paid to ride that thing. Man, the world has changed. The college football world has changed dramatically over the last few years. The way I've kind of tried to state just how crazy it is in the last 3 years, we had NIL, where players could get paid. We have free agency, where, kids can transfer, without penalty. And now all of a sudden we have college football realignment. We have Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC. We have USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington now, just in the last few weeks. You guys are well aware of the news. They're going to the Big Ten. We no longer have a Pac-12, which has been around for 100 years in existence, and it's all happened in 3 years. We have seen more change in this sport in 3 years than the previous 100. And it's all been compacted into this crazy time. And I think we're still in for a lot more change. The next 5 to 10 years, we might see more and more change. And I want to get some of that. I know we'll talk some questions about Florida State's future too when we open it up for questions. But I want to talk about a couple things real quick. And then the thing I enjoy is hearing from you guys and talking about what you want to talk about. So I'll open up for questions pretty soon. But I want to say a couple things real quick about sort of the game the other night, which was phenomenal. And Coach Storms, he's humble. He didn't want to say, but probably the most important coach that you will hire as a head coach, there's offensive coordinator, there's defensive coordinator, and it's strength coach. Like that position that on your staff spends more time with your players in a hands-on way. The development of the players, what we saw on the field was a direct result of the job that he's done. So I can't commend him enough. And I didn't tell him because he was probably going back to the weight room, to get after him some more. And then he was I was upset. I was like, man, I have to match that intensity. I don't know, that was an intense individual, which pretty much defines most strength coaches that are out there. But as I got to go back to the game. I was there with my family. I had my youngest with me on the sideline, and we were watching the game. And before the game, I was on the field, and I would say for the first time, probably since 2015, 2016, this team looked the part. Because there's a couple times, I remember I was with Peter Warwick here for a spring game, probably 2 or 3 years ago, and we were watching practice, and Peter Warwick, he came and we were talking, we're all invested in the program, and we want to see what's going on. He's like, we look better, but we just don't have those dudes, like those guys that look the part, the first round NFL talent that we had walking all around the place when Charlie and I played. There was guys all over the place, and you just felt like, man, we're gonna have to really scheme people up. And when we go against Clemson, or when we go to an SEC school, or we have a big game, we're really gonna have to scheme it up. And hopefully we can play hard. And those things are great. You need to have that effort. But it just felt like, man, and somebody who's I've gotten to go to a lot of different practices. I've been to Alabama, Ohio State, and at that time, same, was going around to all these practices. You're like, we're not winning getting off the bus. That's those other programs. And for the first time since then, just walking around the sidelines and watching offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Johnny Wilson is a monster at 6'7". Keon Coleman is a unbelievably freakishly gifted athlete that looks like, oh my goodness, that guy looks different. Jared Verse, we heard about some of his, metrics that we've got. This team looks the part for the first time. And then when you have a coaching staff like this, and I think Coach Norvell is one of the most underrated play callers in the country, because when we talk about offensive minds, Lincoln Riley gets a ton of credit at USC. Ryan Day gets a ton of credit at Ohio State. There's kind of the names of the offensive gurus of the sport. I think Coach Norvell is one of the best, game planners, in-game adjustment guys that is in the game. And I don't know if he gets enough of credit for that. Him and Alex Atkins, our offensive coordinator, they do a phenomenal job of getting this team ready. The other thing I noticed too was, and this is one of the reasons, because we make picks before the season, and I'm always very cautious, because as much as I'll support the Garnet and Gold, you want to be a professional in our business, and I'll root for Florida State every time they play, but I have to be objective in who I pick to win games or to win the ACC or to make the playoff. And I have to be very careful in that. I want to make sure I'm unbiased in that approach. And so I picked 2 teams. Now this was a little bit outside the box, but I don't like going all chalk and saying, Michigan, Georgia, and Ohio State and Florida State. So I don't like just going chalk, so I like to do something a little bit outside the box. And so I had a take before the season. I said, I think the ACC has a chance to get not one, but 2 teams in the college football playoff. I just didn't know it was going to be Florida State and Duke. I mean, that was, last night was pretty alarming, especially if you're a Clemson fan. But I'll say this about that game. I would not write off Clemson. And I don't think Coach Norvell or the staff or any of those players will let us overlook them. But as I was watching the game the other night, I was thinking about this because it was not a pretty first half. We had a lot of mistakes. We had a lot of bad calls go against us. I still don't understand the roughing the passer call and Jaden Daniels. I mean, it is football. They're supposed to be able to tackle, and it did not look like it was worthy of a penalty. And I thought Jordan Travis was struggling a little bit. He forced one ball where he was trying to throw the quick screen, and yes, it was a good play by the defender, but it was an ill-advised pass. And then there was when he was backed up on 3rd down, and he was scrambling and threw the jump pass over the middle. That's a throw that'll get you benched a lot of times. And it probably should have been intercepted. And as I was thinking about that, I was actually texting a couple buddies. Dusty, my guy who's coming here, my co-host, he texted me at halftime. He said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "I feel pretty good. We're down 17-14. We're down 3. But I mentioned to him how poorly we had played. And I love this team's makeup. And I do think it starts with Jordan Travis, but I think it carries over to Jared Verse and some of the other leaders on this team. There is a mentality that is very mature, that is very focused, that is very resilient, because they've been through a lot. Jordan Travis has been through a lot in his career, way more than I ever faced when he's had to transfer in here from Louisville, and he's had people second-guessing him throughout his career. I remember coming here, and I was like, is it Jordan's team or is it Mackenzie Milton's team? And, which one do you think is the guy? And there was always that question mark. And trust me, and Charlie would attest to this too, as a quarterback, you feel those questions, you feel those doubts, and you have to block them out and set them aside. So for a lot of quarterbacks, you'd be watching that game and be like, oh, I don't know where their confidence is. Are they rattled? Are they going to be able to rebound from a couple rough throws? That's why I felt good about this team, because I was like, you know what? He's going to be fine. He'll settle into the game. They'll make the adjustments they need to, and they'll be fine. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Is that resiliency and leadership and intangibles that this team has that I think makes this potentially a super special season. And I'll be honest, when you're making the preseason picks, I'll get full disclosure, because you can find anything online, so you can probably go look it up and see what I said. But I thought Florida State, I thought this team, I thought they were ready to compete for the ACC championship. I thought they were ready to potentially beat Clemson. But I didn't think they were ready to go against the likes of the big boy, like Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, who's been to back-to-back playoffs. I was very, man, how do we match up against those teams? Because when you do a deep dive on some of the 4 and 5 stars, my buddy Bud Elliott works on the Cover 3 podcast. He has the blue chip ratio. What percentage of your roster is made up in 4 and 5 star talent? Alabama, by the way, leads the country. 90% of their roster is 4 and 5 star talent. I mean, it's not even fair. Georgia's up there in the top 5. We are outside of the top 15, barely. We're just below 50% of the roster as a 4 or 5 star athlete. So for that, I was like, man, it's like, I think we can do a lot. I think it could be a really special season, but I don't know if it's a national championship worthy team just yet. But I tell you, I'm changing my mind, because when I saw the other night, that team looked like they could compete with anybody in the country. So I think this team could be really, really special, and I cannot wait to see, how it unfolds. There's a couple storylines across college football entering into this season that have been, kind of dominated our discussion on the radio show and on College Football Live and the shows that you see on TV where they're talking about the sport. And, there's a chance for history this season. You have Georgia has the opportunity to go for a three-peat, back to back to back, something that hasn't been done in college football since the 1930s when Minnesota did it. So we haven't seen that. That's an opportunity. And they have a really good chance. Their schedule is a cakewalk. They'll probably be back in the playoff. Then you've got Caleb Williams, the quarterback at USC, who is most likely, I would say there's a 95% chance he's the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft next year. But he has a chance to do something that hasn't been done since the 70s, when Archie Griffin won the Heisman Trophy back-to-back times. We have that opportunity for history as well. And then we have another storyline which has dominated the airwaves, and that's been happening with a former Florida State Seminole is coaching at Colorado, and Deion Sanders. And so we had, when Deion made his comments when he was, he was at a press conference, and, this reporter, she asked Deion, and you can hear it, she says, I'm a Cane, you're a Knoll, and she was getting ready to ask her a question, and he cut her off, and he said, whoa, what did you call me? And he said, where did I graduate from? And she said, well, you're a Knoll. He said, no. He said, I didn't ask you that. He said, where did I graduate from? And one of the other reporters noted, said, Talladega, it's an HBCU. And he said, yeah, that's right. He did his research. He pointed it out. And I thought it was a little awkward, a little clunky. And I thought it was a little bit, to be honest, I thought it was a little disrespectful. And I thought it was, and that was pretty much what I said online. Now, I don't know if you follow me or not on X. I think I'm nicer in person. I sometimes can be a little sarcastic, a little snarky, but I kind of chirped back at him and I said, this is kind of wild. Like, you're a Seminole, whether you like it or not. I think you could have handled it differently. There's a way to handle this question, and I didn't think that was the right way. Because I think he easily could have said, yeah, right, I was a Seminole. Even if he said that. I was a Seminole, but now I'm a Buffalo. I respected my time there. Coach Bowden was one of the best ever. I learned from him. And there's a zillion things you could do to kind of just acknowledge Florida State that you were one of the greatest players that ever played here. And also that you want to go on and do your thing there. I mean, it happens all the time in college football. Mark Richt, our coach, went to Miami. And he was a Florida State Seminole, and then he went to be a Bulldog, and then went back to Miami. And I think he appreciated every stop along the way. And so, Deion, came back at me, and it was all of a sudden, it was something that was kind of going viral. And all I said back to him was, hey, you are one of the greatest, if not the greatest Seminole that's ever worn the garnet gold, but am I allowed to call you that now? Or you do not want me to call you a Seminole? Is that where we are? And I do, I think it is a great story. I know there's a lot of contention because of what happened to Travis Hunter. I get that. And I think there was probably some things that he's heard, some criticisms he's taken that has probably rubbed him the wrong way. I think he also, now, I don't know if I should tell you guys what I wanted to tweet. But I took the high road. I felt like I took the high road. But I wanted to say, I know you're upset that you didn't get to coach at the best university in the country. I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, so I tried to take the high road, and I said, hey, you're one of the best. And I said, I want you to succeed because I like to see Seminoles succeed. That's what I do. But what we saw, it is historic what he's doing. I mean, he is changing the landscape. He's changing the game. He's doing something we've never seen happen because of the rules. We're talking about the new rules. He is taking advantage of them more so than anybody else in the way that he's turned over his roster. And he's going to be a significant force, whether you like it or not, with what he's doing. I didn't think it would work this soon. I thought in year 2 you would see some improvement. I thought you could see them be a bowl team, maybe possibly challenge, and they're going to the Big 12, maybe be one of the top, third of that league. I did not expect to see what we saw on Saturday. I mean, that was remarkable. But I've also maintained that below the surface, behind the sunglasses, underneath the cowboy hat, behind the trash talk, he's a really good football coach. And I think he learned a lot from Mickey Andrews. I think he learned a lot from Bobby Bowden. And I think he's taken a lot of their principles, and they might look different, but the core of what he's trying to do, I think, is very much a reflection of the time he spent here in Tallahassee. And I wish he would acknowledge that. So we'll see. And I I would also say, because I've seen some people double down on, oh, that was a fluky win. Don't do it. Just enjoy the ride. Watch, see what happens, what they can do the rest of the season. Although I know there's going to be a lot of Nebraska Cornhusker fans this weekend, because they want to see him go down. But just enjoy the ride, man. It is pretty special to see what they're doing. One last thing, and then I'll open it up. And I'm sure there'll probably be some questions on this one. I have a question for you guys, actually. What conference are we playing in? Can anybody tell me? Are we going to be in the ACC? Are we going to be in the SEC? Are we going to be in the Big Ten? I would love for you guys to tell me, because I can't figure it out. Independent, maybe that's an option too. Yeah, right. So it is, and I give Michael Alford, our athletic director, who I think has done an awesome job, helping us get to this place where we are, locking in Mike Norvell, and really kind of bringing, providing all the resources that a program like Florida State needs to go where we want to go. I cannot say enough about the job that he's done as one of the top athletic directors in the country. I get a little bit nervous. I don't know about you guys. USC just had an opening, and I was like, come on. And thank goodness we get to keep him. Yes. Because he's going to be a hot commodity, every single year because of the job he's done. And I commend the job he's done. And, I know he's been very vocal about Florida State's stance, which I would tend to agree with. And, I think we've all, probably figured out. I didn't know you could stream Board of Trustees meetings until this year. I thought they were kind of boring. I was like, what do they do with these things? And now you find out what's happening. But I don't know what the future holds, which is kind of a scary place to be, but I do trust the leadership that we have, that they'll make the right decisions to get us where we need to be. Because I do agree the philosophy that if we stay in the ACC, which I had a great time. My freshman year at Florida State was our first year in the ACC. And it's funny because conference pride, conference strength, it's such a thing now, the SEC champs, which I still can't stand, or last night or this weekend, rooting for North Carolina to beat South Carolina, who cares? I like Mac Brown, I'd like to see him win, former Seminole, but does it matter? But yeah, you kind of need to root for your conference because the perception of your conference matters in today's environment. And if Florida State remains in the ACC, financially, and this is straight out of the mouth of Michael Alford and Drew Weatherford, who said the same things, it's just unsustainable. Because, and you guys are all aware of the issues we're facing with the media rights deal, the grant of rights, and where we're locked into the ACC until 2036. And, if we're operating at that much of a gap or a deficit of the schools that are in the Big Ten and the SEC, in today's landscape where you are allowed to pay players, where you're allowed to, offer players, and I do think sooner rather than later we'll probably be paying the players outright as employees. It's just impossible to keep, asking boosters and donors, hey, we need more money to try to keep up with Alabama and Ohio State and those others, Clemson and all those other schools that are out there. But even more specifically, the teams in the Big Ten and the SEC, when they're getting $40 million more from their TV contract, it's just unsustainable. Here's the dilemma I'm in, though, because I have a tremendous amount of respect for Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, and I think Michael Alford does too. And it's kind of one of those things where I think it's more, hey, it's not personal, it's just business. I think that's kind of the mentality that Florida State has taken. I think it's the right mentality. I would love to see the ACC remain intact. I would love to see ESPN step up to the plate and renegotiate the contract. I know we just added Stanford, Cal, and SMU, which is it's a little awkward, right? I hope you guys are all looking forward to road trips to Palo Alto and Berkeley. Man, it's going to be weird, but it's the best of a lot of bad options. There's nobody left. A lot of the schools that have been plucked, the better brands, the brands that really bring value to the ACC are kind of gone, except for one, Notre Dame. And that's what I wonder if Michael Alford's method in whether it's working or not, is to try to put more pressure on ESPN, on Jim Phillips, on the ACC, to really tell Notre Dame, hey, you guys are a full voting member, which I have a big problem with when they're not a full member in all sports. If you want to express your opinion that Stanford and Cal, like you're stepping up and you're saying, hey, we need to have them a landing spot. That's great. Well, if you want them to live in this, let's call it a mansion called the ACC, you need to move in with us and all live together. So I think that's the one that could be the Hail Mary that kind of saves everything if Notre Dame would commit fully, but I don't know if it happens, because Notre Dame is always, they've prided themselves on independence, and they've been able to keep it, and they've got multiple TV partners that allow them to not have that deficit that all the other teams in the ACC and SEC are dealing with. So I wish I could come up here and tell you, like, all right, here's the future, here's what's happening, here's where we're going, but I honestly don't know. And I talking to Jim Phillips, I just talked to him and I said, hey, congratulations on the new members, with those teams coming in. He was in Orlando, and I talked to him before the game, and he was like, hey, thanks. He's like, we had to. He's like, we absolutely had to do it because we need to make up as much of that difference as we can. Another fun one, I don't even know if we were in front of a bunch of people. They weren't focused on us. But I do think Jim Phillips is a fan of Florida State. He's a fan, he's the ACC commissioner. He was wearing his garnet and gold tie. But we were on the Jordan Travis run for the touchdown that put Florida State up in the third quarter. I think it was the third quarter, late third quarter. It was right, so I was on the sideline running around, and so it was right in the red zone, when he went in. And lo and behold, Jim Phillips is like right here. And and so I'm with my daughter, and she's like, give me a high five, and she's jumping up. And all of a sudden, he comes up, and he jumps on me. And does this whole, he basically jumped in my lap. He was so fired up that Florida State had scored because he wanted to win that game. He wanted, he's repping the ACC as their commissioner. And so he was fired up for him. So I think he would love to be able to keep Florida State. I just don't know if he's inherited something that is unfixable, in that TV contract. Because he didn't negotiate it. He inherited it when he took over. And we'll see. I did see Greg Sankey too, the commissioner of the SEC. And he's probably one of the most powerful men in the sport. And he came up with a sly smile. I know him. He kind of knows I've been a little hard on the SEC. And he said, hey, I hope your boys take it easy on us tonight. And I think he was saying it in a way that was like trying to set you up. Just kind of fluffing you up a little bit, but then deep down inside, I think he was like, oh, we're taking it down. But we didn't see that unfold, did we? We didn't take it easy on him either. That was fun. All right, let's open it up, because I don't know what you guys want to talk about. All right, right there. What we got?
Deficit for Notre Dame. What kind of money deals do they have as far as TV?
Sure.
That they could bring to the ACC? Do you know what that might be?
It would definitely help. It would be fun, because that's what I don't think you'll be able to match. Just the brand, the value of the ACC in totality, I don't think is anywhere close to the Big Ten or SEC. But I don't even think you don't have to have a match. It's just got to be reasonable. If you can get to even a $15 million deficit, even 40 is such a massive number. And Drew Weatherford pointed it out on the Board of Trustees. He's like, over 10 years, that's $400 million. And I know $150 million is a lot of money, but it's doable. You can make it work, and especially if they continue. So let's say it was the SEC and Big Ten are probably going to be around $90 million per school, and if you could get to $70 million per school, but they keep so they went to the consolation, the compromise that Jim Phillips made was this evaluation of distribution, so that the winning teams get a bigger cut. So, and it's only like $5 million. If Florida State wins the national championship this year, whenever they start doing it, it's going to add, probably 6 or 7 million, which is nice. But over the long haul, it's not anywhere close. But all of a sudden, if the pot is that much bigger, that could be 15 million, and then all of a sudden you're right there. If you're a winner in the ACC, and kind of keep that, at least reasonable. But it's just untenable where we are now. It's just too significant, the deficit. What you got?
Do you think Colorado will have an effect on the recruiting on the West Coast with USC and Oregon and UCLA?
Yes. I'd say
Deion go that route.
No, Deion is going to be a problem for everybody, not just for us. He is going to recruit against USC. And that's Coach Bowden was a brand himself. He went about it entirely differently, but he was a legend. He was recognizable. He was great with the media. He would talk to any media that was there. He would play anybody that was there. But he was different, but he became a brand in itself, where you wanted to go play for Florida State because you wanted to play for Coach Bowden. I mean, that's one of the reasons I chose it. I mean, I love the university, but I wanted to play for Coach Bowden. I think he's developing that type of following where it's becoming the place to go. It's like the cool place, and it's a place where we can have this coach that's gonna. How many other coaches? Because I saw a lot of quarterbacks play great this past weekend. A lot of them. Michael Penix at Washington threw 450 yards. He had 5 touchdown passes. I didn't hear Kalen DeBoer at halftime with the interview saying, "Oh, he'd give him the Heisman now." He didn't, and then he's talking about both, and he's promoting his players, which today's player absolutely loves, and it's part of like the landscape today, and players will gravitate towards that. So he's going to be a problem now. NIL neutralizes some of that, but guess who else is getting excited? Colorado boosters. They're going to start pitching in, and that he's going to be a problem. He's going to be a force, especially if they keep winning. That was the one thing that everybody was like, well, he's talking all this game, but if you don't back it up, it kind of falls flat. And then all of a sudden you can have a cool coach who's looks the part and is fun, and he's got his own reality show where the cameras are following you everywhere. But if you're 3-9, the best players want to compete for a championship. And if he starts winning, then it becomes that much more significant. What you got?
Yeah, as part of the initial national championship goals, how important is just that that desire to get that trophy effect for a veteran team like Florida State this year?
Glad you brought that up, because I'm a little bit upset. Because Travis Hunter, the two-way player for Colorado, was catching passes and playing DB. I was a two-way player. I contributed more. I was the holder. How many guys do that? And quarterback. That's a lot on your play. Charlie was obviously the leader of that team, but there's 2 aspects to it, because I think there was a ton of pressure on Coach Bowden and the team. Again, you feel as a player, you feel the stress, you feel the questions, you feel the doubts, and it was, for Coach Bowden, it was always been a really good coach, but he hasn't won the big one. He hasn't been able to do it. And I remember when Charlie won the Heisman, it's like, well, when was the last time a Heisman Trophy winner won the national championship the same year? There was all kind of critics, but the hunger and the desire to get there, I do think it matters the most. Like when Coach Storm's in here talking to us, it's in the off season. It's because everybody wants to play on game. Everybody's hungry on game day. Everybody loves running out in front of 80,000 fans and can't wait to get out there and ball out and give it your all. But the hunger happens in those mat drills, in February, and in the off-season workouts where he was talking about, here, and it's 5 a.m. and you don't want to go, you don't want to get up, and you want to go through the motions. That to me is when that hunger, that desire for, we haven't done anything yet. We haven't won anything. We haven't won that national championship, or like you get close, you get a little taste of it. If we can just push through a little bit harder, which is what makes it really impressive what Georgia's been able to do, because it is so hard to go back to back and to keep that hunger. It's like you have let's say you go to a Shula's for dinner, right? And you stuff your face and you have this unbelievable meal, and all of a sudden, like a few hours later, like, hey, you ready to eat again? Like you're just like, I'm good. I don't need. I just ate. That's kind of like the way it is with a national championship. Like you're feeling pretty good. Everyone's telling how good you are, and you can take off. You maybe sleep in through one of those mat drills, and you don't keep that focus and that mentality. And I thought it was very interesting that coaches now, players now, you almost have to trick yourself into the chip on the shoulder. Tom Brady was one of the best at it as the greatest quarterback of all time. He always found something to irritate him, to make him angry, so that he was going to do what it took to get back to the Super Bowl. And last year, I don't know if you guys saw what Nolan Smith, their linebacker, said after the game, because I was on the field at the national championship, and we were interviewing players, and this one player comes up, and we were interviewing him, and he goes, y'all said we were going to be 7-5. I was like, what is he? This is Georgia we're talking about. Like everyone thought they were going to win the SEC and probably repeat. They had a great chance to. Some people picked Bama, and I was laughing like, what is he talking about? And sure enough, Nolan Smith, one of their defensive leaders, they found, one person that maybe wasn't even real, and they found, and that's all they talked about was no one's picking us. Even though a lot of people were, they just found a way to get motivated and get ticked off, so that in those off-season workouts, in the summertime when it's hot outside, you're like, man, these people don't think we can do it. They think we're going to be 7-5, and they find a way. But this team, I don't think they don't need to trick themselves. They've got it. They've got the motivation they need. And that's why you hear things, when Brian Kelly says what he says. I think it mattered for this game, but we didn't know that 4 months ago. This team came in hungry. They talked about it. I know they read about it, but you can't just get ticked off from a quote the week of the game. The real work gets done in the offseason. By the way, I don't know if Charlie did this. He was a better man than me. But listen to Coach Storms talk about the GPS, the trackers. Holy cow, I'd have been screwed. You get tired and you're running gassers, and you might say, all right, is the coach watching? And you may take off one breath. You just want to take it easy, just catch your breath. Now, they have trackers on you that are telling, they know your heart rate. They're like, you're not running fast enough. Get going again. I would not have survived. Holy cow. Yeah.
Make it personal, Danny. When you left Florida State, you went pro with the Giants, I guess Falcons and Broncos and stuff. Tell us one lesson you took from Coach Bowden, and one lesson you took from Charlie Ward with you into the pros.
The lesson I learned from Charlie, man, maybe would have been maybe I should have chose baseball. He chose basketball and it worked out great for him. And I'll never forget, because he was on the Knicks and I was on the Giants, and I think it was Glenn Foley, who played quarterback at Boston College, was the quarterback for the Jets at the time. And there were a lot of reporters, there was a lot of conversation that Charlie Ward was the best quarterback in New York. And we're out there, he's not even playing football. I was like, it's hard to argue against. I'm like, you're probably right. But, I kind of told a little bit before about Charlie, what I learned from him, just the mental makeup and the, to keep your priorities straight, humility and work ethic and family. And I would say that's probably similar to Coach Bowden. The football lessons are there. I remember Charlie, I don't know if he remembers this, when I think it was my first home start, and Charlie was back here in Tallahassee, and we're playing, I think it was Virginia, and we had this smash concept, 564 smash, which is a pretty basic read. It's a little stop route, and there's a corner route behind it, and we had run it a couple times in the game, and I'm out there trying to make the big play. I'm trying to wait and squeeze it down the field and make this unbelievable throw, and trying to squeeze it in there, and had a couple incompletes, and we kind of struggled. We had a couple 3-and-outs, and Charlie was on the sideline. He was like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, he's trying to lead our team up the field. And he's like, you see the stop route's wide open out there, just take it. Just take what they're giving to you. And I was like, that's probably right. And so then I started doing it. And that's what, I think that was the beauty of what Charlie did, is you were really kind of playing basketball on grass. He was facilitating the offense, and it was a thing of beauty to watch, because he was just getting it to the right guys and making the right decisions. And a lot of time in quarterback, when you're playing like Jordan Travis, with the weapons that he has, you just have to make the right decisions, get it to the playmakers, and let them do the work. Sometimes I think young quarterbacks try to do too much, try to make the hero play, and every play doesn't have to be the best throw. It doesn't have to be the touchdown. They'll come. The opportunity will present itself. You just have to be patient. I thought that was, something last night. Reverting back to Clemson, I'll just hit one more thing, because Clemson's still going to be an issue. I think September 23rd, it's going to be a tough game. Don't fool yourselves into thinking it's going to be, okay, now we're just waltzing through an undefeated season. the thing I think we forget about is teams improve. 2014 season, Ohio State, they lost their second game at home to a Virginia Tech team that finished the season with 6 or 7 wins. They weren't very good. And Ohio State lost by 2 touchdowns at home. And they went on and ran the table, beat Alabama, and won the national championship. And a lot of this commentary was similar to what it is around Clemson. And it was similar, young quarterback, young team, high expectations, but they fell massively short. Like the same thing could happen with Clemson. There's a lot of talk about the demise of their Dabo Swinney era and dynasty. They could get better. I mean, they handed that game to Duke on a platter. They had 3 opportunities inside the 5. They get a field goal block. They fumble it twice. They outgained them. They were better on 3rd downs. I mean, every facet of the game, they were better. I think that's why Dabo was so despondent after the game. He's like, I've never experienced a loss like this. And the other thing is, too, I don't know if you've thought this, because I often talk like, Charlie, your first few games, like it was a struggle for you. And sometimes we want quarterbacks to be perfect right away. Because sometimes we get like Bryce Young, he stepped in at Bama, he was awesome. And Caleb Williams at USC was awesome his first year starting. But it is very much a process. And Cade Klubnik, a young quarterback, he clearly struggled. But what if he can get better? Can't we allow guys to improve? They had a few drops for him too. If they start executing, they can be where they want to do. Now, I do think their receivers are an issue. I think we should be able to handle them pretty. They got to go in and get better, clearly. But they still have a very talented squad. Yes?
So I think our defense is going to do what they're going to do, but I think our offense, nobody can touch it. That's why, we're all FSU fans, right?
Sure.
But I just don't see anybody in the country, Johnny Wilson,
Keon, Jaheim Bell.
seriously though.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous in my opinion.
So the best part about that, I totally agree with you. And I was making preseason predictions again. I did pick Jordan Travis to win the Heisman, and a large part of it was because of the weapons that he has around him.
Yeah.
But I think the best surprise of the night was I wasn't sure the defense kept Florida State from going down 7-0.
Yep.
That goal line stand was massive. Because you hear that first play, they hit the back out of the backfield and they get 60 yards, and they were going like clockwork down the field. If they score, they gain more confidence. They start to believe. You start to doubt. They start to believe, we can do that all night long. But the defense, man, did they show up. And that was probably the biggest surprise to me, was the defense carrying the offense. I would have guessed the opposite. The defense will give up a few scores, but the offense will be I thought it was going to be a higher scoring game. I knew we'd score a lot of points. I thought they would too. But the defense showed up in a big way. Yeah, I think our offensive weapons, and really, one of my favorite things to do was you have a size advantage. It's one thing to have a fast receiver, but a lot of guys are fast. It's hard to see. As a quarterback, I'm sure you guys have seen the video that went viral with Keon Coleman where, he's over there waving. He's like, I'm way bigger than this guy. And Jordan and his coaching staff saw it, and they were like, oh, you're right. Let's throw it to him. And they had a touchdown. When you have 6'7" on the outside with Johnny, that is if it was just him, like we saw last year, it's an impossible matchup. Then you put Keon on the other side, who's 6'4", and fast, and has maybe the best hands, and he's probably the best route runner on the team. And then you have Jaheim Bell at tight end, who scored on that little play later, who's a big tight end is a position that is tough to match up with already, but then who are you going to match up with them? You got a veteran back, you got a veteran offensive line, and a veteran quarterback, and not even mention some of the other guys that will step up big inevitably, because they're going to get mismatches just because the best defender is going to have to take away all those weapons. It's just going to be fun to watch, what this offense can do. And I think a lot of people are comparing this Florida State team to the 2019 LSU team because their offense was historic. When Joe Burrow had 60 touchdown passes and they had Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson on the outside. There is a wealth of riches on that offense. I don't know if you guys saw this. Keon Coleman, Marvin Harrison Jr. has got a lot of the a lot of love, and deservedly so. The Ohio State wide receiver as the best wide receiver in the country. Is the number one projected draft pick. Mel Kiper at ESPN before the game he had Keon Coleman at number 2 as the second best wide receiver in the country, which is pretty astounding. And then Mel Kiper looks like a genius now. He was right. But everything I had heard from the coaching staff here and from people that watched him play at Michigan State, it was like, man, are you guys lucky to have this kid? And it's pretty wild. And to see him deliver on that stage was huge. Barry, in the back.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your opinion on NIL, collectives, maybe even future forward investment in college football and what it's going to do to the next of college football in the future?
Yeah. I think Charlie and I just want to know if there's going to be something like on lost opportunity, or we be able to go back and reclaim. Especially Charlie. I remember the amount of autographs he was signing when he won the Heisman. Holy cow. So I have changed a lot in my opinion on this topic. Probably 10 years ago, I was more old school because I did really firmly believe that there's a value in getting an education, and having a scholarship was something special that did provide a value to you. And then, and the other aspect is when I left Florida State and I got drafted by the Giants, one of the first things I noticed, I was like, oh, this is not college football. Like when we all lived at Burt Reynolds across the way, we'd hang out together, you'd hang out with your guys, you'd go out to eat together, you'd hang out by the pool together, like you just hung out, it's like a family. Well, then you go to the NFL, and guys are going home to their wife and kids, they're going over here, they're just doing different things, they got bills to pay, they're meeting with their accountants, they got, real world problems. The other thing I saw was guys that I got really close to got cut. I got cut. I love playing in New York, and I got cut. I'd have loved to have been locked into a scholarship that was, okay, this is where I'm going to be for 4 years, I know it. Same thing happened in Denver. I was a backup. I was cheap, and I was like, I could live here for a long time. Got cut. And I experienced that feeling of, man, I wanted to play on this team, and I can't anymore. And I think you're going to see more of that, because I do think we're going in a direction where we're going to start paying the players. They're going to be more like employees, and it's going to turn more into the NFL cutthroat business model. It's funny because we've talked a lot about Deion. He was pretty forthright. He said, hey, he told players, they're not good enough players. He essentially cut players in college, and that will be, and it happens already. If there's a player if you're a new coach, you can make his life miserable, which probably isn't really a great way to go about it. To be honest with you, I'd probably rather get cut, so maybe there's some good things about it. So, that being said, I was always sort of more of the amateur model as a good thing. And then NIL came along. And again, if you would ask me 10, 15 years ago, I would have bought into a lot of the lines, the cliches that you've heard of, well, it's going to be a distraction. And in a locker room, what if your player's making $1 million and the guard's making nothing? How it's going to ruin a locker room. It's going to ruin the dynamic of the locker room. Well, you know what I did? You know what I saw? When I was in the NFL, there were guys that were making $10 million sitting over here, and there was a guy making $200,000 over here. We were still a team. Everybody kind of knew, oh, that guy's the quarterback, or he's the best pass rusher in the NFL. Yeah, he's going to get paid. This guy's not. Like, you figure it out. And not to mention, there's a player like Kyler Murray who had signed, a $6 million baseball contract. He went to Oklahoma. Was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. It didn't seem to bother hitting that locker room. So there's like some things that you start to look at and you're like, man, are we sure this is what we think it is? And so I thought NIL was going to be a good compromise because I did think it was very un-American, uncapitalistic to have a quarterback like Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman Trophy. He's back at USC. It still feels weird, but I saw him on commercials during games, and he's a current player. But why is it different than when I see Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, And so like to that point, I was like, yeah, if he can make that money because of the brand he's built, then good for him. Why would we prevent anybody from making money when they have that opportunity as a brand off of their name, image, and likeness, the truest sense of the word? What I didn't anticipate, and I don't think anybody did, was how quickly that would devolve into, there's a quarterback out in California who we want to come play for Tennessee. Let's get him an $8 million NIL deal that he doesn't have any brand, he doesn't have any name, image, and likeness. There's no value that he brings other than he's coming to play quarterback at Tennessee, so we're going to pay him to do that. And they've circumvented it, they've quickly changed it to pay for play, which is what they didn't want. So again, here comes the evolution. If this is where we are, let's just start paying them. Let's make a level playing field so that you can't have some schools have an unlimited NIL program, others don't. Let's get everybody, let's have a salary cap. Like, we really want to go down this road? All right, let's make it fair. Let's make it a fair fight, because for a lot of programs, it's not. And we're in a very fortunate position at Florida State. We have unbelievable support and people that are willing to step up and donate and make and want to be a part of something bigger. There's a lot of programs that aren't. And it goes to the question I said before, like how long does that last? How long till people get tired? And there's a lot of excitement right now around Florida State. But what if you start losing? Or what if the player that you backed, like a Quinn Ewers, who you might have said, I want him to come to Ohio State. He's a 5-star quarterback in Texas. I want him to come. Whatever check. You need $1 million? Here it is. Make sure it goes to Quinn Ewers. And then he goes to Ohio State, and in 1 year he goes to Texas. You think that guy wants to write another $1 million to the next guy? Maybe. But if I'm assuming the guy's probably a smart businessman. He's made that much money. Does he want to do that again and risk that player doesn't play? I don't know. There's a lot of like issues that are there. The other thing too, I'll never forget, I was on my radio show at ESPN with Ryan Russillo, and we had this debate has been going on for 10, 15 years, but really is amped up, and now we've gotten this turn, is he would say, I would say that I don't know if there's enough money. I just don't know if there's enough money to fund all the sport, not just football and basketball. I have 3 daughters. Are we sure we can handle keeping women's soccer, women's volleyball, men's tennis, all the non-revenue sports? I play baseball here. Are people going to shut down baseball programs so they can fund their football program? And I was very concerned about that until we started seeing these monster TV deals where I'm like, all right, now it's too glaringly obvious how much is flowing in, and the players that are truly doing the work and providing the success aren't getting a piece of it. And also, if you really get into the weeds, there was a Supreme Court ruling 2 years ago, the Alston ruling, and Brett Kavanaugh had a pretty scathing indictment of the NCAA and the amateur model, where he basically pointed out, he said, what other industry in America can you have a free workforce, where the labor is free? And I always had a problem with that because I thought we played a sport. I didn't think it was work, but it very much is like a job. Being a scholarship athlete is like a job. You have to be there at a certain time. You got to check in. You got to punch your ticket in. If you don't, you might have to run. You can get your scholarship taken away. If you don't show up. So in very many ways, it is a lot like work. So I've definitely evolved, kind of as I've gotten older and seen the way things have changed so dramatically. What you got? I love that jersey too, by the way. So turn around real quick, because I did not think it was going to be a Kannell. I thought for sure it was a Jordan Travis jersey. I have not seen my jersey in one of the modern ones with my name, so I appreciate the love and support. I did take my daughters to the game, and they wore my old Orange Bowl jersey and stuff, and they had Kannells on there. And I was trying to tell them, you see how popular I was? Look at all these 13s. They figured it out pretty soon. What you got?
Real quick, a quick statement. I think the ACC network dropped the ball. They didn't hire you to be a counterpart to Paul Feinbaum. I think it would have been a tremendous, entertaining show and a great way to promote the league. That's just my statement. My question is, next year, it's hard to believe, 40th anniversary of a game we call the Choke at Doak.
Yeah.
And there was a key moment in that game. He had probably the best fourth quarter performance of any quarterback who ever played here. We're down near the goal line. You had a play action fake and a bootleg.
Yep.
The guy that bit on that fake was a guy named Kevin Carter.
Yep.
Lineman for the Gators, ironically a product of Tallahassee Lincoln High School.
Yep.
He bit, and you just rumbled and stumbled and got into the end zone.
Yeah.
Touchdown in your career, I don't know. But years later, you worked with Kevin in the media.
Yep.
How often did you guys reminisce about about that.
So,
Overall, perspective of that day that was so special.
so Kevin and I still work together. So he's with me at CBS Sports. In fact, I leave Friday. I'll go up to New York. We'll be in studio all day today, Saturday. Like clockwork, every time it's rivalry weekend and Florida State plays Florida, I go to our producer and I'm like, hey, gotta bring up the highlight. They have that play. They'll circle, they'll like do the highlight around Kevin, and I do like a full breakdown where like you break it down and then just really want to point out to him the speed that I showcased getting away from him. I mean, I probably should have ran more because I was so fast. But it's a blast. And Kevin is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. It is crazy to think that he was here in Tallahassee and then went and played for the Gators and was I think he was a number 3 or number 6 overall pick in the NFL draft and had an incredible NFL career. But all the time I think about that game and that performance, and clearly it was my best moment as a Seminole. I wish there was a bigger moment. I wish, because Charlie started something, won us a national championship. I wanted to get another one, and that was the expectation there. If you didn't win the national championship, it felt like you fell short. And so that was just a kind of an empty feeling that you have, is not being able to be the quarterback that won that championship. But that game, to be able to be blessed with the memories of those guys that were on the field, and to be able to talk about it with you guys here, and I think we were up to 2,000. I didn't know we had 200,000 in attendance, but the amount of people that said they were there, and also said they didn't leave, which I don't know. I might have to see some receipts on that. It was awesome. I mean, there was an angel watching over us that day, and me specifically, because it was rough. I mean, at halftime, I remember going through the tunnel. I'm sure Charlie experienced this at some time through his career. I could hear people saying, "You suck," I probably was Johnny. Was Johnny there? And you can hear him chanting, like, "We want Busby," you hear that. And I remember in the locker room, Coach Bowden and Mark Rick, they had a little huddle-up conversation, and I knew what they were talking about. Do we take him out of the game? And Mark Rick, after they met it, he said, "We're going to let you keep going, but it's going to be a short leash." That was essentially what he told me. And so it just started out as, let's not get embarrassed. It was, let me keep my job. Let's just make sure we make this respectable. And it didn't happen. That third quarter, we did start moving the ball a little bit better. We started to move the ball, so thankfully I didn't get benched. And then the fourth quarter, we just caught fire. And I don't think I've ever seen a performance, because I think, I get a lot of credit for it. But Omar Ellison had an unbelievable catch on the sideline. Warwick had so many outlets that he took because they were playing prevent. I'm just like, all right, you're going to let me do this all day? And he'd go get 20, 30 yards. Aaron Daly was a receiver who never had caught a pass. He caught a little pass that, got out of bounds and kept the clock moving. I ran for a touchdown, which you never saw me do. Zach Crockett ran one up the middle. That was an unbelievable play call. That was, just a kind of an old school. We were running so much, 4 wide receiver, and he was able to get it up the middle. Brock Preston, scored the touchdown that put us down 1. I mean, we had so many different guys step up. The offensive line gave me a ton of protection, except the one play where I got knocked crazy, concussion, like symptoms in that one. Because I remember, I saw there was a play, and I love it because Gene Deckeroff on his call, he's like, "Whoa, Kannell gets rocked." And I was like, yeah. I think I came up and I was looking at the wrong sideline, for the play. And I was like, oh wait, I'm over there. But it was such a, and then going back and thinking about it, if one of those things doesn't happen, that's how much we needed to score so fast. And we needed to be, we had such a deficit to overcome. If one of those things doesn't happen, we don't come back, and it falls short. And if Omar Ellison doesn't catch that ball, or Kes McCory doesn't get a quick score, or Warwick doesn't make a guy miss, there was a spot on a 4th down that we went for it. Kes McCory catches us, and it's a 4th down, and there was a spot that was probably favorable. We didn't have replay, but they gave us the 1st down. If that doesn't happen, we don't come back. It just felt like it was such a special day because everything that needed to happen happened. And it's unbelievable. Moment that I'm so proud of all the guys that were around me that day. It's just, you had that bond of being on the field. It was unbelievable. We were talking, and the defense. Man, I do that sometimes. Quarterback, forget about the other side of the ball. But they started killing Danny Warfel. James Colsey had an interception where he's diving. I mean, we had so many plays across the field that were just phenomenal. So
Make
much
us
fun.
proud.
Yeah. We're back. Last one, I'm told. Last one.
Statement, I was there and I did not leave.
There you go. One more question? What you got back there?
You just talked about the coaching those, which was fantastic. What was the team's mindset going into the Sugar Bowl?
Oh, we knew we were going to smoke them. Like we really did. Because, you know, we started moving the ball. I mean, maybe I shouldn't have run. Because I did try to run. I scrambled. I thought I had the first down. But again, not being a runner, my field awareness probably wasn't. I was like a half a yard short. And if we had, we tried to spike the ball. We couldn't get it off. So the game ends. But we had so much success. And you just saw the dissension on their team. And you kind of felt like it had been such a deflating loss for them. But I'll tell you one of the moments, I don't know if you guys remember this, we're in New Orleans prepping, and you go 4 or 5 days before, and we hear this story, true story, you can look it up. There was a fight at their team meal, and like another player was grabbing a knife and trying to stab another player. We were like, oh, we got this. They can't even go through a meal without getting in a fight. We're good, we're golden. We just kind of knew, we had that much confidence. And for a young quarterback like myself, I mean, that was one of those games that kind of pushed me over the top where I was like, all right, if I can do that, I can do anything. And like, so it's confidence is such a big deal in sports and life and everything, and belief in yourself. But you have to do it a lot of times. You can tell yourself so many times, but you do need to feel it and go out and do it. And so that was like kind of, I never looked back after that game. So I was like, all right, I can do this. And so that was kind of the mentality. I took it in, and we had so much fun. Warwick, the double pass, where he took the swing pass that we had hit like 50 times. And they were like, not this time. They come up, and then he just goes right over the top, and it was a thing of beauty. They never had a chance. We good? Thank you, guys.
I was there, and I didn't leave. And these folks are way past their bedtime, and they didn't leave because of you.